back of the frame, and it is Jerwood's match. He'll choose which way to go around the leeward gates. Right-hand side as he heads back upwind. Now it is Williams' turn to decide whether he wants to follow round or split to the other side. And with that jibe, Simon, looks though he's setting up for a split.
I mean, Matt Jerwood did a nice job down that run. He has extended considerably on the way down that course. From what was a small lead in the pre-start, he's managed just to edge away. And we have seen quite varied conditions out there on the race course. Tucker, I know you were talking about this being almost a bit like lake sailing.
Yeah, the puffs are definitely in this direction, Simon. The breeze is coming over the shoreline, and you can be within a few lengths of your opponent and sailing in different angles, different pressure. And a big split like this with Jerwood all the way to the right and Ian Williams all the way to the left-hand side looking upwind means the door could be open for Williams if he's at the correct side. Which side do you like, Simon, looking out over the race course?
I mean, at the moment, I like where Matt Jerwood is. He's coming across, I think, perhaps slightly bow down, so perhaps not the greatest of shift, but what he did a really nice job of was using that lead to move into a position where he was absolutely in control of the match, giving Williams ultimately the right amount of rope, not letting him get too far away, but also continuing to sail expansively, which is so critical. You can see just the way the boats are twitching up and down. There are big shifts out there on the race course, and it's all about managing your risk as you sail around. How much gauge you give to your opponent versus how sure you are about which the right way is, and how you balance that equation is really the nuance of how to race in this condition.
Ian Williams coming out of that tack pretty slow on to starboard. Meanwhile, Jerwood, a beautiful tack just to make it hurt a little more for the six-time world champion. Williams finally getting up to speed here. But he seems a bit off form in this first match.
Well, he hasn't quite managed to find his rhythm so far, but you also look at it and you go, where did he make a mistake? You know, the way this course is structured, the way the wind is sort of coming down the course, it is difficult to find those opportunities. It's not, you know, he does need to make sure those tacks work out though, and that is notoriously tricky, particularly in shifty changing conditions.
Jerwood now approaching the boundary, so he will tack back onto starboard to stay in check with Williams, who's also approaching the left-hand boundary inshore here off of Royal Freshwater Bay Yacht Club in front of the fans. And he'll be setting up for a tack. There it is onto port. Big delta, though.
They have these exclusion zones running up and down either side of the course. You'll often see the boats with the tacks being so relatively expensive in really any multi-hull as they sort of zigzag upwind. It is important to try and minimize tacks. You will often see the boats going all the way to those lines of exclusion and tacking back. What does that mean? It means you need to think ahead. As you're coming around that bottom mark, you already need to be properly processing exactly the route you want to take upwind, because you're affecting a lot of your upwind strategy with your choice at the bottom gate.
Now at the top gate, a thin ley line for Ian Williams, and he will elect to do a full tack onto port and probably a bear away to that side. We're at the top gates for the last time. Sorry, Jerwood rather. And he will round the right-hand gate looking upwind, leaving Ian Williams with a decision to make.
Absolutely. Williams has already anticipated that, though. You can see him heading off to that right-hand side. He's definitely planning his run to be able to come in on the opposite mark, but Jerwood, no slouch. Jibing around the line of Williams just to make sure that he's about in phase with them as Williams rounds the top mark. Williams sailing in the Gibbs Court boat, and we had lots of friendly people along from that insurance group. I think they're actually insuring all of these M32s, so I'll be glad to see these skippers keeping them apart as we race around the course.
There is the delta with Ian Williams now rounding about 25 seconds behind for the final run. Make that 38 seconds to the lead boat. Jerwood in charge, Williams giving chase. Now,
I mean, this really hasn't fallen for Williams, and you know, coming into this round, I think Williams felt he wasn't necessarily on the best of form yesterday, but we were in the fleet racing stage, you know, and Williams is no slouch. We've seen him perform exceptionally well in this boat, particularly in the wind. Through most of last season, he was one of the form boats in that up pressure condition. And, you know, into yesterday, it wasn't really going his way. We had a capsize from him. We had a couple of other like sort of results-based wobbles. It was very kind of changeable, dynamic condition. But going out there today, you know, I expected we were going to see that same meticulous sort of board-like process-driven, you know, absolutely inch-perfect execution. And you know what? Into this start, it just hasn't really materialized him. Jerwood has almost like sort of ignored his strengths and just sort of sailed away.
I'm sure Williams not happy with that. Jerwood setting up at the bottom of the track, the furl on the Gennaker. These boats a lot more physical than you can imagine, and these sailors at elite level fitness are at the top of their game. Jerwood will round the left-hand bottom gate and head back upwind to that side. And there's a look at the delta between the two boats. You know, Simon, one thing that amazes me watching this race is that it's one thing to get ahead in a race and defend, but it's another thing to continue to keep stretching out over someone as talented as Ian Williams. What do you think is going on there?
I'm not sure. It's, I mean, ultimately, at this point, I think I put it down to the condition. I think Jerwood is you know, well seasoned. You've got to look at the sort of timing of the seasons. You know, this is, for Williams in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the season opener. You know, you've got a fresh couple of guys onto the team. You know, Richard Sydenham joining in a sort of, you know, a sort of strategist role, I suppose. He's still got Garth Ellingham calling tactics. But, you know, I don't think he's quite gelled. Whereas Matt Jerwood is coming into this off the back of a whole summer racing here in Australia, in the Southern Hemisphere. You know, they've both been competing internationally, but I think Jerwood's just sort of at the top of his game. And you know what? He's also got nothing to lose. He's going into this swing. He's one of the nicest guys. You know, and it's great to see him doing well. And, you know, partly why we're covering this as our first, like, officially streamed match here in Perth is the matchup. You know, we're looking at a champion just slightly off his game, and a new young gun that's absolutely firing on all cylinders.
And of course, these are Matt Jerwood's. This is his backyard, if you will, from the South Perth Yacht Club here in Australia. And he is just on perfect form so far, right from the start, Simon. Right from the start with Ian Williams. Has been on the back foot ever since, and it is Jerwood's race to lose. Looking at Williams, trying to find any moment to catch up as that delta just continues to grow.
So welcome back. If you're rejoining us on the internet, we're looking at Matt Jerwood coming back up the beat, in control in this match, leading Ian Williams in this crucial Super 16 round here in Perth. Leg 5 of 6. Jerwood in orange, Williams in blue. We're coming up to the final top marks, and then it will be that dash to the finish. And Matt Jerwood has really left nothing to chance in this race, leaving Williams on the start line and then just slowly sailing away with better boat speed.
One thing we've seen in the earlier races this morning here on Freshwater Bay, this wind direction at the top of the track has had some holes, and that's where we've seen the trailing boat, the door open, and the trailing boat able to catch up in some of the matches. But in this case, it's such a big delta to Williams all the way behind there. Jerwood could slow down and still maintain this lead as he tacks on to starboard for the last time and sets up for the turn for home.
And I caught up with Matt Jerwood earlier. We'll, I think, perhaps try and bring you some of that footage. But, you know, he really is a calm, lovely guy. And, you know, it's great to see him performing at this level with such ferocity but humility.
Yeah, definitely a future star of our sport. No Gennaker, this team will just easily glide toward the finish line. And it is local star Matt Jerwood, having bested 6-time match racing world champion Ian Williams. He goes one up.
Well, 1-0. And you know what? If you're going to win an elimination round, you just got to win races, and that's exactly what Matt Jerwood has done. He's gone out there, he's seeked and destroyed, and you know, Williams will be having a little bit of a think about that. It's one thing to see, look at that little match thing, now know who's won. There's one thing to see a sailor come through the line and just pip you by the post. It's another thing to see the guy that you're racing against just blitz off into the distance. You know, you got to think, how are you going to counter that? I mean, it's not really, looking at that, it didn't really look about strategy.
Yeah, that is demoralizing. Now, you have raced with Ian Williams quite a bit. You've won two match racing world championships with him, so give me a sense for the mood on board Williams' team right now.
Well,
it is only match one.
We're looking right on board Ian Williams now, and I can see Ian's in the center of the board, just chatting away to Garth Ingham. You know what, I think he's going to be upbeat and positive. You know, the one good thing about having won 6 match racing world championships is you know how to win, and you've watched yourself lose before, you've watched yourself win before, and you've watched other people doing exactly the same thing. And you know, Williams has been here before. You know, he knows that, you know, sometimes you go out there and you don't win the first match, and you know what, you may not even win the round. It's all about how you build up through the season and how you build on your results. You learn from your mistakes, and ultimately you sort of kick it over right at the end.
Well, let's go back in that race all the way at the start, Simon, and analyze what happened.
So, Jerwood there trying to roll across the front of Williams, and this is where Jerwood does a really nice job. We see him aggressive up, and then he goes aggressive down and hard back up again. Now, at this point, if we just pause there, at this point, Ian Williams is a lot faster than Matt Jerwood. Now, if he uses that speed to try and get below him, he's in a great position to attack. Now, what Jerwood does as it advances forward is actually locks Williams to windward. Williams not doing anything here. Now, he's building a lot more speed at this point. He brings the bow down. Jerwood does a really nice job of responding, but Williams really looking to try and use that to roll. Jerwood responds, brings the bow up, but Williams unable to get behind him here. And now Williams just actually locked out to windward. Jerwood does a nice job of the burn. He's not exposed to being rolled at all. He sits there, he waits, and as the gun sounds, he just pulls away into the lead. Excellent start from Matt Jerwood and his team.
Certainly that's how you want to start an event like this. If you're going to make a statement later on, this is the Super 16 knockout round. Each round is a best of 5, first to win 3 match series, and as you just saw, Matt Jerwood has gone 1 up over Ian Williams. Here's a look at the scores. In fact, here's how things went this morning. If you look far left, Taylor Canfield won all 3 of his matches against Peter-Jan Postma. Going all the way down to the bottom, Sam Gilmore lost to Jan Guichard from France. And there's Jerwood with his 1 point over Williams. And finally, Chris Steele. Very difficult sailing, but finally prevailed over Jonas Warrer. And now we looking towards the quarterfinals. That's what these top 16 teams are looking for, but only 8, of course, will move on. There's a 2-minute signal, Simon, so we're about to get underway in our second match. And now we're looking at David Gilmore, son of America's Cup champion Peter Gilmore, local sailor here, and then of course Evan Walker from Australia also. So this is the match for national pride.
Well, Evan Walker over from Sydney. So this is the Western Australia, the WA versus the man from Sydney over the other side.
East side. Here comes, they're in the pre-start now, as you can see. Here's the 1-minute mark. The red boat is Gilmore, and to his right, the green boat, Walker.
Interesting that the man from Sydney's flying in the green colours, so he's got national pride on his side, leading this pair back down. 50 seconds to go on the clock. Walker doing a nice job of leading this pair back, getting down. He's still a long way from ley line, actually. Gilmore needs to do a good job of driving him back, looking for a little bit of a roll. Gilmore starting to pull the trigger. Now, can he get across the front? He needs to get across and down. I think Walker doing a nice job of forcing them back here. Gilmore needs to get across the bow of his if he's going to try and roll. Otherwise, he's going to end up early. Final 23 seconds. Walker still pushing. Gilmore finally able to roll over the top and bring the bow back up. But has he turned too quickly? Will Walker be able to roll across the top? At the moment, Walker, the man with the momentum. In the Sol Skis boat, bringing the bow down in the final few seconds. It is Evan Walker from Sydney that I think gets bragging rights, leading this pair over the top. But recall yellow, so Walker having to go back. He just has to drop behind Gilmore, so pulling the trigger a tiny bit early. And David Gilmore is the man that will lead this start off the line for Western Australia.
Tough break for Evan Walker, but he has shed his penalty by dipping behind, and it is David Gilmore out in the lead at mark number 1. Now the game is on, Simon. The delta is only about a length and a half between these two teams.
David Gilmour's really impressed me this regatta. One of the real stars. You know, he hasn't been doing as much match racing as his brother Sam in the last year, but he's really brought a maturity, I think, to this regatta. He's seen it before. We have seen him on the World Match Racing Tour lots of times before, and you know, he really seems to have a feel for the angles in these boats, a feel for the wind, and you know, he's been moving through the early round. He wasn't winning it by a mile, but you know what? He was in it all the time, in the top third of the fleet, marching on step by step. You know, we could see him quietly go through a couple of rounds and end up in the final stage of this regatta. Who knows? Maybe go all the way for Western Australia.
So both boats now on port and a good puff of breeze halfway down the run. Gilmour in a strong position. He's got flexibility to do whatever he wants, setting up for this bottom gate, left or right-hand turn, of course, and that'll be decided well early based on where they want to go upwind. Gilmour has jibed onto starboard, and if he's laying, it looks like it'll be a right-hand turn around the left-hand gate looking upwind. Here comes the furl, and no, I was wrong. A double jibe. He will take the right-hand gate.
A really nice execution. It's hard for us to be completely on top of the choices he made there. It is a very wide gate, so it does open up opportunity for both boats to pick their route. Neither of them getting particularly even fair. We're looking at Evan Walker there with just a little bit of a flap as he came around the mark. But a great split.
And Simon, to my eye, the left-hand gate looking upwind looks farther away from the teams as they were approaching. Would you agree with that? Do you think that Walker had to sail extra distance to get that split going, or is it just an optical illusion?
I think there might be small deltas in difference, but if you look at the gauge and the split that these guys have achieved, you know, I think this is about which way you think the wind's going to move and where you think the pressure is going to be. And to my mind, Gilmour there reassessing his plan in the final stages of the approach to that bottom mark, cooling that right-hand side of the race course. And you know what? As the boats come back together, he was, you know, reading the wind like the pages of a book. He's managed to pick that out of nowhere and managed to double his lead.
And there he is. In a few moments, right of screen, you will see Walker ducking behind in the green boat. And now the question, stay with your opponent or continue all the way to this left-hand side? And looking at the racetrack, it seems like the puffs are better all the way on the boundary, on the left-hand shoreline here. And that is exactly where Gilmour is headed before the tack. And
so welcome back if you are just joining us on Facebook again. We are watching the Super 16 round here from the first stage of the 2017 World Match Racing Tour. I'm Simon Shaw, I'm joined by Tucker Thompson, and at the moment we're looking at David Gilmour and Evan Walker in their battle, both on zero, but David Gilmour out in front.
And if you are just joining us, the question is, where have you been?
I mean, we'll be bringing you live coverage all week.
This, of course, is the Match Cup Australia, the first major World Tour event of the 2017 series.
So we're looking at Gilmour changing strategies. He gets near the top of this beat. We saw him there tacking across early, crossing to that right-hand side, and he's burnt quite a lot of distance back to Evan Walker to achieve that. We will be seeing him, I think, go all the way to ley line. I expect Evan Walker will try and do the same. I think they've got just enough sea room. There are boundaries running up and down either side of the course that they have to tack when they reach. Evan Walker's coming up to one now.
There's a big stinger of breeze just at the top of the track, and I'm wondering who that's going to advantage first. This is where we've seen the lead changes earlier in the racing today. It's at this very top corner where the breeze gets really tricky. You can see Gilmour there just getting into a bit of puff, raising the hull, and then back down again. Now it's Walker's turn. If the game's going to compress, Simon, it's going to be right here.
Well, Gilmour prioritizing that right-hand side. You know what? He's managed to make it stick. Leading around the mark. Evan Walker just forced to follow as Gilmour around.
For those of you watching, hitting the marks is okay under these new rules in M32 match racing. And Walker will split, taking the opposite gate. Big puff of breeze for him. Now, Gilmore has jibed to stay with him, but just look at that massive speed gain.
I mean, huge edge for Evan Walker as he rounds, picking up the best of that gust. David Gilmore did a really nice job of trying to respond to it, but this will have leveled things up. Gilmore now picking up that same breeze. It's his turn, and you can just see quite how big the deltas can open up here on this race course. Very, very tricky sailing. And Evan Walker, from the aggressor, is now the man watching David Gilmore blast down the run.
And that was exactly what we were talking about earlier, Simon. The top of the track is the trickiest part of the course. That's where you roll the dice, see how things come out. Gilmore looked a bit dicey there for a second, with Sherwood and a big puff, and now the
so
overhead
looking at
shot
that,
gives
you can
the
see
delta.
them coming down the run. They're almost pointing in the same direction, Tucker. You know, the difference in the wind within, well, only 100 meters of the race course. And David Gilmore is really fighting to defend.
He's done a nice job, particularly when it got tricky. Now things open up breeze-wise at the bottom of the track. Gilmore looking a lot more comfortable. Now, again, the choice, which he will have already made, which way to go upwind, left or right. And again, he makes the same choice, Simon. He'll head to the right-hand side, rounding the leeward gate, and Walker gives chase.
I'm not surprised by that. We've seen him twice on the last beat, heavily prioritize that right-hand side. Once he made a big gain. The second time, you know what, he actually lost a little bit, but it was nothing crazy. He managed to sort of defend his position and stay solid. He had that starboard hand advantage over on that right-hand side, and now Walker has it all on to try and come back on this beat and close things back up. Just the beat to the top, and then the reach to the finish.
Now Walker here wants to get a big split to the left-hand side, get as much leverage as he possibly can. He's bowed down in the left-hand shift. That's the good news. However, Gilmore, seen this movie before, so he's actually tacked early, and he's coming across the middle of the track to stay in check with his opponent.
Walker sailing in the Soul Skis boat. Great to see a ski manufacturer, I think made, or going to be partnering with the factory where the M32s themselves are made in Sweden. Developing their advanced technology into the ski. They're trying to develop, sort of use really boutique and luxury materials that sometimes might have been sort of excluded or prohibitive on cost from being sort of integrated into the skiing technology platform, if you like, and they're going to be really pushing that. And you know, it's kind of cool to see those sorts of partnerships, skiing and sailing, all at the very cutting edge of technology.
Look at you with the good bits, Simon. You're not just a pretty face, are you? You know, you have to give Aston Herald a lot of credit. They have invested a lot in not only reinventing the tour, but changing the sport, if you will. And now we are match racing in monohulls. It's no secret that the tour has always been the breeding ground, if you will, for the America's Cup, which, as you know, is also in monohulls. And these could be the future sailing stars. Certainly some of them here have been so in the past.
I mean, we've seen that progression. You've only got to look at the top of the America's Cup to see that the World Tour probably the primary feeder, along with the Olympics. A couple little dots out of the Extreme Sailing Series. Those are really the kind of feeders into that top flight of world sailing or match racing tour. I mean, we've had more match races on this World Match Racing Tour across the 2016 season and now into 2017 than probably 25 America's Cups put together. You know, this is where you come if you want to have that sort of crucible of sailing, if you like. And you know, if it wasn't for one or two rules, I think we'd probably see a lot more America's Cup skippers kind of here, actually sort of going through that baptism of fire. And when these guys get loosed on some of those old guys, I just wonder what's going to happen. You know, the future of the sport is looking good if this is what it's looking like.
I don't think there are too many old guys left at the top level of the game, Simon, and for good reason. I was out with these guys yesterday. The athleticism is unreal. It puts this monohull sailing that you and I used to do many, many, many years ago. Makes it look like we were just standing still back then. David Gilmore around the final turn and heading for home. Jenneker just easily deployed, no rush there, and no need. So our local hero, David Gilmore and crew, heads for the finish line, and he has wrapped up his match over Evan Walker 1-0 in this best of 5, first to 3 knockout stage. Once again, I'm Tucker Thompson with Simon Shaw. We'll be bringing you all the live action live across the world all week long here at the Match Cup Australia. We will rejoin Ian Williams and Matt Jerwood in their second match in just a few moments. And Simon, one thing that we've seen in both of these matches so far is that once the leader gets ahead, they've done a really good job at extending and not actually allowing the trailing boat to compress the game.
I think we've seen all things, you know, across the run of the last day. I think the last two, you're absolutely right. It has been one of those courses where it seems like the capacity to extend is there, you know, but it's a tricky one. I think we may well see the reverse happen on with different rolls of the dice. But you know what? I know we may well come down and try and talk to some of these skippers in a moment, but you know, my thoughts are really focused now out on, you know, the Williams-Jerwood match. Eagerly is anticipated. You just only have to look at the draw to kind of scroll down and go, ooh, that looks like a tasty one. You know, Williams not perhaps coming into Perth in the form, or at least not displaying the form to date that he and I think others would have expected. But Matt Jerwood coming in absolutely swinging, calm, great attitude, super fast sailing. I think that's what Williams is going to find hardest to combat. It's just Matt Jerwood's relentless speed.
So let's go back and analyze that match, Simon. We go all the way back to the pre-start. Here we go.
So in the leeward position, Jerwood is David Gilmour, just looking to try and hold back Evan Walker, but Walker just holding off. We can just pause that there and scroll back. Let's just look at that setup just as they kind of exited the line. It's right here where Evan Walker is just able to hold on to, and we'll play it forward slowly from here, just able to hold on to the gauge between the two boats. It's that gap that is critical to Evan Walker's acceleration here, because in this moment he's able to bring the bow down, and in doing so he's able to sort of accelerate away, ultimately roll and go on to win the match.
Okay, I've just received word that we have David Gilmour down on the water.
So going out now down to David Gilmour. You know, what are your reactions out on the race course? It looks like a real tricky one.
Yeah, our reaction after that race is pretty happy. We were able to just start in front and extend from there. But I mean, we're just sort of taking it as it all comes. The breeze is really shifty out here, and just sort of a bit of rolling the dice as you bounce the boundaries upwind. So we're sort of trying. We've got a few moves that we're trying to pull off each race, but then in general, you just got to sort of hope that the wind comes your way most of the time, and it did for us that race.
And David, we're going to try one more question. In that right-hand side, we saw you prioritise that right-hand side a couple of times out there. Do you feel there's something for you over that side?
Yeah, from the racing we were watching earlier today, we sort of thought that a few races were lost by giving up that right-hand side down the bottom. You generally get quite a nice shift on starboard out of the mark after you tack. So yeah, that's sort of where we've been going.
Great stuff. Well, good luck in your next match. I know Western Australia is cheering for you in this Australian derby.
I know his parents have been watching the racing. Of course, he has yet to face his brother Sam. That should be a good matchup. A little match of brotherly love there. I don't think there'll be any love on the water once these two start.
I don't think there would be many love lost at all, but we don't know whether the schedule's going to give us that one. We will see. Sam Gilmour still to come in this elimination round, but we are now 2 minutes 20 out on what could be an epic matchup. Jerwood versus Williams.
Now, Simon, we mentioned this before. You've sailed so many times with Ian Williams. How is he going to approach this race differently than the last one? Clearly, he wasn't happy with it.
I think Williams was just being conservative in that pre-start. I think he's just kind of hanging back. He's definitely got positional advantages in how he's able to sort of make judgments about when to head back, when not to head back. I think he's just going to try and keep it loose, really, and try and just sail the boat fast. That's where Jerwood's defeating him at the moment, and that's for me where he needs to focus his mind. Less on the details, more on that boat speed.
So here we go into the pre-start. The 2-minute warning has gone by. Minute 38 to go. It's Williams again in blue and Jerwood in orange. Here we go.
Williams looking to try and catch Matt Jerwood out in the luff. Jerwood bringing his Jenica out, building speed, and actually now coming underneath Williams, looking to hold him off to the right. Williams with the furl. Quite a long way away from the start now. I expect we'll see Williams come up into attack, look to try and head back into the start. Jerwood up to match. Now, this is critical. In this point, can Williams get far enough to windward of Jerwood? He needs that separation. You can see him really fighting up to try and break free. He's actually tacked away. Jerwood bringing his bow down. Now, Williams has a lot of separation at this point. He's turning all the way down. I think Williams looking just to try and separate to windward. He has that crucial gauge. The only thing he's kind of perhaps got to worry about is there is not long to go now. I think time for the boats to point back at the line. Jerwood really just shadowing Williams, just staying in the leeward position. He again will want to be up to speed. You know Williams is going to come back fast. Final 28 seconds. Williams brings the bow down underneath Matt Jerwood, who comes down to defend. Can Williams get the hook? Jerwood already starting to turn up. Only 20 seconds to go as Williams turns back to the bow and comes back for another dig. And Matt Jerwood, can he get overlapped outside? Jerwood responding so far. 13 seconds to go. Williams down with another dig. But in 10 seconds, Matt Jerwood is out in front. He's bringing his bow up. He doesn't want to be early. They're back on the line. Who will win the acceleration in the final few seconds? Matt Jerwood bringing the bow down. Almost even Stevens, all clear off the start. Matt Jerwood to windward, Ian Williams in the leeward berth.
Well, it was definitely Ian Williams, the aggressor in that pre-start, right to the very last second. Now it's bow to bow into mark number 1, but Jerwood with a puff of breeze to windward plows forward. He's in the lead, but only just.
Well, we can see the completely unbiased team from 91.6 Sports FM having a little bit of a clap. Jerwood there going above the committee boat. Wow, both M32s buzzing the tower there as they come thundering past the finish boat, inches to spare on either side. I'm sure they spilled a couple of cups of coffee over the Finnish controller.
And this time Ian Williams is right into it. Jerwood ahead again. Just rolled over the top of Williams after that start. And you were right, Simon. We did see a much more aggressive Ian Williams in the pre-start. But I just wonder, here it is again. It's just like we saw in the first race, a little bit of a lead now, just continuing to constantly grow for Jerwood. Is it better speed, more time in the boat?
I don't know. I mean, it's certainly noticeable at this point, you know. I think it's down to the race course and differences out there. I wonder if there's just some small tweak in how they're sailing. We certainly saw Jerwood running with slightly less Jenica ascension. We will be looking at the setups of the boats to see if we can spot anything that they're doing differently. But you know, Jerwood's just not making any mistakes. You know, he kind of started above Williams there, rolled over the top, and kind of now just sort of sailing away a little bit.
Yeah, it's one thing to get the jump on someone like Ian Williams once in a while, 6-time world champion. It's another thing to just outsail him on this hometown race course, but that's what Jerwood's doing here in this second match. A split upwind.
So 9 seconds. Williams has that right-hand side. Now, we heard local boy David Gilmore really prioritizing that in our chat with him after his last match. Williams has that. Looks to have quite nice pressure over on that right-hand side too. Now, Williams needs to bank these gains if they're going to come, and actually does look quite low on port as he comes up to the tack. It looks to me to be potentially the favoured side. Let's see what happens when they come back together. First, Williams needs to make it out of the tack. Bring the bow down. The Traveller now coming back up as the boat speed starts to build. Jerwood coming back across.
Uncharacteristically slow tack for Williams, but he's still in a good amount of pressure. I'm not sure the angle's good, but the speed is. Has he gained a little bit on Jerwood? Here's the cross.
Jerwood, I think, still comfortably across. If anything, perhaps edging out a second or two. I think that's probably the difference in the tacks.
Okay, so this is a best of 3. First one you could chalk up to chance perhaps. Second one, I don't think so. Ian Williams will have to start getting a little bit nervous at this point because he'll be on match point and up against it after this if things stay the way they are.
I mean, we talked about changes in strategy, and you know what? I think we're going to see Ian Williams not just throw the kitchen sink at Matt Jerwood after this, it's going to be the crockery shelf, the wine rack, everything. The pre-start is going to be where this is going to try and happen for Williams, because I think he knows that unless he can start ahead of Jerwood, he's going to struggle to keep him behind him. Clear speed differential, whether coming through the setup, the boat tune, aspects of how they're sailing it, how it's being driven through the water, it's hard to know, but at the moment that's there, and Williams will be sort of racking his brains. His crew will be looking for how they're set up. Williams has actually been one of the quickest sailors in these boats across the last year and a half for their function.
And we know it's not the boats. I mean, Aston Herald's quality control, second to none. That's one reason they shifted to the M32. These boats are absolutely identical. And of course, the sailors can't adjust the rig or anything like that as far as tweaking them. So it comes down to technique. And Jerwood right now has the better.
Well, it's certainly technique driven. It is hard to, even if we're in the most exact one designed to be absolutely certain every single tension and every single sail is absolutely bang on in every condition. But you know what, we're not talking about a sort of fine delta here. I think this is to do with mechanics and choice.
We're also at the top of the track, and this is where we mentioned it gets a bit dicey. Williams, if he's going to catch up, this would be his moment. He's got a bit of separation to the right-hand side. If Jerwood sails into a lull, which has happened at the top of the track, it would be Williams' moment to pounce. Now, will Jerwood tack or continue straight to round the offshore gate? He'll continue straight into the set. Beautiful job. Williams may have taken a little bit out of him. The question is, will it be enough? Also, I believe Williams will set up a split here at the top, and will that help him as he sails down the left-hand side of the race course, looking, of course, into the wind direction. Jerwood jibes and immediately stays in touch with Williams.
I'm really pleased we saw Matt Jerwood coming on there, because what that does is it tells a story of his strategy and his psychology. Jerwood coming around that top mark. He could have tacked in front of Jerwood.
Look at that breeze. Look at the speed delta now, Simon. Look at Williams go.
Well, Williams bringing extra pressure down. It certainly seems to be coming back for Williams, up in this windward position in the blue. He's starting to roll a little bit across the front. Jerwood now riding that same puff down. The
Like a
racing
freight
still
train.
on between
Williams
these two.
is just on the attack.
He's absolutely coming at him. He's giving it everything coming down this run. Williams in the windward position, trying to ride this puff down, but Jerwood always responding in that leeward position. He seems to have an answer. Williams now through the turn. You can see the bottom marks just looming into view. He's hoping to catch a shift and lay down. He's got a couple of, it would have to be a big one. Williams now up to speed, and the Traveller dropping down, flying the hull.
And that, of course,
apparent wind build. Jerwood's gone a lot further. Now, if Williams was able to get down to that mark, he would make quite a big gain, but at the moment, a few degrees off. Matt Jerwood in lighter condition, actually electing to jibe at the bottom, being very brave and expansive, Matt Jerwood. He made a choice at the top that I thought was really brave. That's really the point I was sort of building up to make. And again at the bottom, actually electing to round and head to that left-hand side, an extra turn to do so. And, it's interesting. He's sailing his own game. I think the strength here is not necessarily in his choice, but in the fact that he's choosing, he has the courage to be expansive. Being defensive in these tricky conditions is often potentially a very hazardous game.
Particularly against a competitor as solid as Ian Williams normally is. And so, as you mentioned, Simon, the split-up win with Jerwood all the way inshore to the left-hand side, Williams all the way offshore to the right. Jerwood just tacking now to stay in touch. The breeze on the course, at least from what we can see, looks to be better where Jerwood is, and now Williams will tack to stay in touch with his opponent.
And Williams through the tacking again, to be honest with you, not getting the best of tacks. And I think this is one of the key differences between these boats at the moment. I think occasionally the boat's not necessarily the quickest through the turns, but, Matt Jerwood is just schooling Williams really in how to get through these tacks. I think for me, Williams should have made a bit of a gain on that right-hand side there. He had better pressure, he had the better approach, he'd halved the delta between the two boats as they come down to the bottom. But then getting over to that right-hand side and just kind of stooling up.
We've seen a lot of these matches over the past few days, and in these conditions, some of the teams will roll the Jenniker out. The timing of how to bring the bow down is crisp and smooth, and it keeps the momentum going through the tack. But Williams seemed to be more reacting rather than proacting and getting his bow down out of the tack there. You saw the difference. It's certainly costly to a competitor as fast and as smooth as Jerwood, and that's exactly what we were just referring to there, the Jenneker coming out.
The Jenneker popping out, but also the execution. It's the timing of that weight onto that windward side. It's the timing of the mainsail trim in to make sure the boat turns up and through the tack. It's the pop of the mainsail, you know, making sure if you get a flog in one of those tacks, that absolutely stops you dead. And it's just managing all of that flow, getting the timing absolutely spot on. You know, in a monohull, you know, we're used to the finesse of the cut of the jib, we're used to the finesse of the roll of the boat, and what we're talking about in these catamarans are very similar parameters. They're just less obvious from the outside, you know, and it's absolutely fine-tuned boat on boat, boat handling execution.
That execution just slightly better on Jerwood, tack for tack, gain for gain. This match number 2. He's already won the first race, and this will be the final turn towards the finish of the second over Ian Williams in this first to win 3 best of 5 Super 16 qualifying rounds here. Only 8 will move on into the quarterfinals. Ian Williams hopes to be one of them, but to do so, he'll have to pass this man, and he'll have to do it in the next match to stay in the regatta.
Well, you know, we're looking at Joe, we're drawing this up to that doomsday scenario, really, where you've got to win 3 in a row. Now, that is notoriously difficult to do in match racing, and for me, especially on a course that it's as shifty as this, you know, you know when that course can just sort of come and bite you, that it's scary times, but no faulting the talent and sailing of this man, Matt Jerwood.
So there it is as he heads for the finish line. You could have said the first match could have gone either way. Jerwood definitely commanded it. Well, you couldn't argue with that now after the second win over Ian Williams, and that'll force a do-or-die third match for the 6-time world champion to stay in the regatta. But all credit to Matt Jerwood.
I mean, Ian Williams has got to ask some very serious questions here. Coming around that top mark, coming down the run. I'm sure Garth Ellingham's going to, tactician, slightly have his head in his hands. He's looking each way, this way and that. I think he's going about the right ways, but it's not falling for them. I think it's about the mechanics of the tacks. That's certainly part of it. I think it's about the finesse in some of those crew moves and the dynamism to sort of execute those. I couldn't really point the finger or know exactly what it was, but there's something in all that.
And you're not talking about very complicated things here. These are basic things that Ian Williams would know. He's been in these boats now for over a year.
But it's
not
the
like it's a
subtlety
magic
of the timing. You know, it's you know, as a painter trying to paint a beautiful picture, you know, you can just say, well, you know, use the right brush, use the right paint. You know, it's sort of more than that. It's the subtlety of timing and movement that often teams find hard to write down. You know, it's not something you could read out some boat notes or just have a couple of sentences and say, you do this, and I'll do that. It's an intrinsically sailing as a team and understanding. And you know, we've got Ed Feathers from 91.3 Sports FM. He's holding up a sign at the moment, and it says "Time in the boats." And you know what? He's been around a bit, and I think that's kind of right. I mean, that's how you learn it. That's certainly how you learn it.
All right, well, definitely Jerwood has put enough time in to show us how to beat Ian Williams in 2 matches. And let's go back into this match all the way into the pre-start with a replay.
So there we go. Jerwood leading this pair back. Again, twisting this way and that. And there, a beautiful response from Jerwood. Jerwood actually led that turn back up as reading the mind of Williams, who sort of turned up and followed him, who's now coming back down for another dig. He's looking for a luff, but Jerwood just holding high, managing to separate away. We've talked about the criticalness of in those lead-follow situations. If you're in that windward boat, being able to separate away so you can't be caught by the luff. And as the gun sounds, Jerwood had that separation. He still had speed on his boat, and we're talking the finest judgments, just having the speed to roll around the front in top. And Williams really just looking on as Jerwood then brought the bow down and sort of sailed away down the racecourse. They're coming past the committee boat, absolutely nip and tuck. Williams just brushing Jerwood off, I think hoping that off the back of that, he'd be able to hold him out into that right-hand side. But such an injection of speed onto Jerwood. He rode that down. And eventually, despite Williams heading off to that right-hand side, making a gain, closing down the Gelter a couple of times on the race course, it wasn't enough, and Jerwood went on to win. We're going to go back down to the race course, where we're going to be watching our next match, and it's that Australian derby. David Gilmour up against Evan Walker.
Coming up on the 1 minute mark, so they're already in the pre-start, and it's Gilmour in red, Walker in green, and Gilmour took first blood, 1 up over Walker. Now the question is, can Walker even the score, or will Gilmour impress the hometown fans here at his home yacht club, Royal Freshwater Bay? Here we go, Simon, under a minute to go.
Gilmour with the lead, leading this pair back. Evan Walker with a big turn up. And Gilmour with the response, trying to close down that gauge straight away. Now can he get the lock in? He's closing down the gauge all the time here. If we can just hold on and prevent Walker from rolling around the front. The Racklery coming up on that Windward boat. That, for me, saying that Gilmour has Evan Walker locked. Windward. Walker just moving forward. Just got to separate away inches between the boats now. Final 20 seconds, and that is what David Gilmour wanted. Walker now ending up super slow on that right-hand side. And Walker in all sorts of bother now. The Genicus coming out. Walker will need to bear away. It's a Y frag from Gilmour. He still is parked. He's not moving backwards yet, whereas Evan Walker in full reverse. And we're going to see David Gilmour bringing the bow down. His stern is going to get near. We can see a penalty from the transom of David Gilmour, jabbing up into the side of Walker, forcing him up onto that wrong side. And David Gilmour closing that one out. Again, he's 1-0 up, and he is leading across the top of the racecourse.
A beautiful job, masterful job there in front of our hometown fans. David Gilmour doing what he needed to do to win the start and now win the first leg into mark number 1. Out in front, beautiful Jennifer furl as well. Now can Walker catch up? The advantage usually shifting to the trailing boat downwind. But in this high-speed apparent wind sailing, that's less of a factor, particularly having been schooled off the starting line by David Gilmour.
Now we're joined in the commentary booth by Sam Gilmour. So how's it like? We're watching your brother out there. He seems to be doing pretty well. You must be really pleased for him.
Yeah, of course, he's doing really well. It's hard to beat after our little toweling out there this morning, but yeah, it looks like it's really nice conditions, and he's obviously put it to Walker in that last race, and obviously the run right now.
Well, through the turn, Gilmour leading this pair back and through the jibe onto port, and now barring away down the run. Walker electing just to follow, trying to dig a little bit deeper as we come down to the bottom gate. This is where the crucial choices need to be made. David Gilmour prioritising that right-hand side of the racecourse. Let's see if he goes for the same again. I expect we will. Now, will Evan Walker follow, or will he jibe off to the left-hand side and go the opposite way up the beat? Electing to follow. And the pair leave the mark, heading off to the right.
And this a lot closer than the first match we saw with Williams. So Walker is within striking distance of Gilmour as we head back upwind, only 2 boat lengths just over it, the Delta. Both teams, as you mentioned, Simon, favoring that right-hand side.
And now, Sam, now we have you in the commentary booth. You know, obviously, disappointment in your match against Jan Guichard. Just talk us through, you know, what happened? What did it really come down to?
Oh, it was a really tricky course out there. You can see the guys having some issues boat handling here and there, and I think getting around the course and being able to push the boat as hard as you can within the constraints was really important. We fell back a bit here and there with a few crew work issues, but I think Jan was sailing the boat incredibly fast. He was doing a really good job and made it hard for us to make a good decision every time. We felt like we had our opportunities, but just one small mistake and Jan was there to pounce. So.
And this is Jan Guichard, Spindrift Racing, over from France on his second World Match Racing Tour. And, you know, he's a wily old sea dog. You know, we've seen him on the front of magazines and winning different ocean races and all these sorts of things. But, you know, he's been practiced at his match racing. As you kind of went into that pre-start, do you feel he's really moved his game on in that area? Or how's he progressed? What happened, Sam?
Look, he's probably listening to us right now, but I think he's still got a bit of work to do with his match racing skills, and that's going to go for anyone. I mean, it takes a long time to become a really practiced match racer, but for sure his skills as a catamaran sailor are really, really on show out there, and he's doing an impressive job to get the boat around the course with those skills.
Yeah, I mean, there are times we're watching him on the downwind and he's just a sort of escape artist, you know, on the right angle, sailing the apparent wind beautifully with the sort of setup and the subtlety of how he's sort of balancing off. Was it with the downwind that you felt that he did any particular damage?
Oh, I actually think with the cats, it's not so much about how you can get up, getting to top speed, but it's actually the going around the corners and trying to minimise your loss and making the small little loss, a couple of metres here, a couple of metres there, and before you know it, it adds up and it's 10 boat lengths, and that's what 100 metres. So he did that really well and managed to control us there.
Well, looking out on the race course, you know, you're a Royal Freshwater Bay Yacht Club member. You've grown up sailing here. I mean, we couldn't be more on your patch. If these boats were running closer, they'd be on the lawn. Now, we're looking out into this course, and we can see it's real tricky. You know, they're coming around the top mark. We've seen boats just escape from almost being right next to each other to suddenly being 10 or 11 lengths apart. What's going on out there? Is it pressure differences? Is it wind bends? Is it how they're sailing the boat?
I think it's a combination of all three that you just said. But for sure, it's a funny wind direction for what we usually get here. So what we usually find is it's just about staying in phase and trying to link up pressure to pressure. And you can see Dave Brothers coming around the top mark now. He's done a really good job with that, I think, controlling that lead. And once you get about 7 or 8 lengths ahead, it's quite easy to just control the race. But for sure, when it's a close one, it's very difficult to continue to sail the correct way around the course without making a mistake.
And you guys have been obviously working on this quite a lot, and I know you've had both your dad coaching here and Bull, you know, to sort of try moving the game forward. In these tight conditions and these changeable conditions, what is your strategy for managing risk, particularly where that match is close? You know, the option to try and cover sometimes almost exposes you more as the lead boat than to just carry on being expansive and stick to your guns.
I think exactly what you just said. Trying to sail expansively and actually just extend around the course is more important than match racing the other boat. We discussed it today, that there's only probably 3 or 4 situations in the whole race course where you're actually going to sail the other boat to put him in a worse off position. All the other times, you're just trying to sail yourself up the course, make the best decision based on the wind, based on the course parameters, and the guys who do that well to manage those 2 constraints are obviously getting good results out there.
And do you feel we've seen a couple of clean outs, you know, ultimately your match against Jan Guichard, where it's, you know, the one boat absolutely dominates the other.
Way to be nice about it.
It feels like the differences
really
between the teams is actually really small, and yet the scoreboard doesn't seem to tell that story. And it's I don't know whether we need to learn some techniques for how to like bounce back or change things up really quickly.
The psychological aspect for sure is huge. Like I think most of the teams here probably haven't raced in 6 months on the match racing circuit, so it's something difficult. Like, we've come back into it after a long break, and being able to go straight into some high pressure racing, it was really difficult. And I think if we could do this week again, we'd probably put a bit more emphasis on trying to do some more pressure lead up racing. I'm not sure how we could go about that, but something to think about for the future.
Well, good stuff. And now tell me a little bit about how this evening's going to go down. You guys all go home after racing, and, you know, Brother Gilmore's just, let's just assume for a moment David's through and you're not. Is he sort of flicking fish fingers across the dining table at you? Is he your new daddy's favourite? Like, what happens inside the sort of Gilmore establishment?
Behind closed doors, we try to keep it as tame as possible. I think it's...
or is it all you're both doing the washing up and making dinner?
No, we try and avoid that whole conversation. Maybe there's a small jab here and there, but I think he'll understand that we're pretty devastated to be out this early in the competition. So maybe not tonight, but in the weeks to come, if he gets through, I'm sure he'll let us know.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm only teasing.
Just rubbing salt in the wound there.
Yeah, that hurt. That really hurt.
Oh,
Sam, you're a star, man.
Arms around the shoulder here for all the viewers at home. Sam's hanging in, and you know, obviously, you know, you as a team have progressed hugely through, 2016 and here, and you know, what's the next steps for you, building up to the next WMRT regatta?
Well, I mean, next week we're off to Long Beach, California for the Congressional Cup. That's back on monohulls, so that'll be fun. We had a pretty good regatta there last year, and so it'll just be a fun week. I think it's a little less pressure there because we know that we've got a little bit more understanding of the boat and the whole event and how that works, and probably a bit more experience in general sailing the monohulls compared to the M32s. So after that, we're just going to try and really improve our understanding of the boats and how they need to be handled to do everything better.
Good stuff. Well, listen, thanks for coming up into the commentary booth, and you know, we're feeling for you, and it's I hope some consolation seeing brother out in front again.
Never.
He's shaking his head anyway.
At least we're keeping it in the family one way or another, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's a
it's
team
the
sport life. It's a team sport life. Anyway,
You're a
great to
brave
have you here.
man.
Thanks for joining us in the commentary booth. And listen, you know, sailed superbly through the early rounds, and you know that battle this morning, you know, much closer than the scoreboard gives it credit. So keep it coming, keep coming on, and you know what, we're going to see. I'm sure it's not going to be long until we're going to see you up on the top of the podium of this regatta. Just keep plugging away.
Yeah, thanks, Shawsey. Thanks, Tucker.
Thanks, Sam. You got it, man. A brave man. Simon, you put him through the ringer a little bit there. But, you know, he's ranked higher than his brother.
Well, yeah,
First
I mean,
of all.
Sam's the man that's doing the match racing, you
And
know.
he's here for a reason. Brother David doing a great job over Walker for what would look to be the second victory in this first of three best of five series. That's the final tack into the final turning mark. Sam's just gone downstairs to cheer on his brother for what will be another victory.
Well, coming up to the top, and there, that 49er stance, you can tell what he's doing for a day job these days. Stood up, bearing away around the final top and heading for victory. David Gilmour has really done a great job, not just here in the Super 16, but throughout this regatta.
Comfortably just furling up the Jenniker now. They know they've got it. David Gilmour and crew will cross the finish line. 2 up over Evan Walker in this fight for Australian dominance, East versus West. And now Walker's up against it in a must-win third match to stay in the regatta. With the best of 5, anything is still possible, particularly in these tricky conditions. But it's been 2-0 so far in both matches. And we're going to go down the water, hopefully, and get a sense for just how it's going out there from on board Gilmour's boat. The bows plowed down for Walker, but no matter. This team knows where they've settled in this second match. And you heard Sam talk about it, Simon. I mean, that's the tough part psychologically. When you're down, how do you turn the tables around? I mean, obviously they're all good sailors. They all know how to win. They all know how to perform. It's frustrating now to be staring down the gauntlet of defeat and knowing you've only got one more match to stay in the regatta. Keep your chances alive for both Williams and Walker.
And, you know, just having Sam up there really reminded me, you know, not just of the savagery of this round. You know, I think when you're starting with 16 teams and it goes down to 8, everyone that gets eliminated feels that they have utterly failed. You know, you feel like you had some momentum, you're in it to win it, and then suddenly the field is cut in half. It's the, you know, the biggest cut in the regatta with 8 teams going out, and it's a real toughie. And you know, I don't know. It's hard. I think not everyone exits the Super 16 round in the same way. You know, Sam actually sailed a great regatta through qualification, learning at different points. And it's like you say, it's tough to see people kind of eliminated. You know, Jan Guichard, you know, came in as, you know, and we can talk about his pre-start not being super, but wow, he's a solid team in these catamarans, a polished professional racing outfit. He knows about the pressure. He knows how to handle himself in that situation, and you know, and he's the man that's progressed through. And it's tough. Sport is tough. You get eliminated. You have to learn how to bounce back. You know, you have to learn from your mistakes and leave some of the emotion at the door when you're down, and perhaps even when you're up. Sometimes
easier said than done. And there's Williams having to turn things around, not only emotionally, but physically on board and get back in the game if he wants to move on in these qualifying rounds. This is the Super 16. And as Simon Shaw mentioned, only 8 will move on into the quarterfinals. And later on this week, the semifinals and the finals will be decided Saturday afternoon right here on Freshwater Bay at the Freshwater Bay Yacht Club in Perth, Australia. Former home to the America's Cup, now home to the first race in the 2017 World Match Racing Tour again. So, Simon, we're going to relive it again. We're going to go back into a replay of that match. Or maybe not.
I think what we're actually going to see, I sat down with Ian Williams and Matt Jerwood before we went out onto the race course, before Ian Williams ended up 2-0 down.
Right.
We were even Stevens before we went onto the water, and I heard what both those skippers had to say.
So we're down here in the Holden, Colorado with two of today's matchup, Ian Williams and Matt Jerwood, facing each other in the Super 16 round.
Teams like Ian and Taylor, you know, we've looked up to for a number of years coming up through the ranks. We believe we can beat anyone here.
We really see Matt Jerwood and his team as favourites for this matchup coming forward. The strong breeze caught us out a bit yesterday.
He's calling you the favourite. How does that make you feel?
It is pretty cool to hear that, but it is what it is, and Ian's a champion and he's got a champion team with him, and you know, we're going to have to sell our best today to take it to him.
You know, we're coming out of the fleet racing into the match racing. Do you guys change gears into that sort of different style of racing?
Well, we'll certainly need to change gears after our performance so far in this regatta. But at the same time, that's difficult because it's been 8 months since we've done a match race.
Interesting to hear Ian Williams talk about his performance not going as well as he had hoped in this regatta, and that was this morning before we've seen his now 2-race loss performance so far this afternoon. As we prepare for the start of match number 3, it is do or die for this 6-time world champion Ian Williams, and you could just sense the pressure from these guys. I mean, it's all or nothing, and it's likely to come down, Simon, to this pre-start.
Well, you know, Jerwood, you could argue, well, certainly according to Williams, coming into this as a favourite in terms of his sailing, his approach, his form, and you know, that really ringing true. I think perhaps louder than even Williams perhaps would have anticipated. Now, but Williams is not in it, you know, he's been here before, and as that entry gun sounds and we get ready to get underway for racing, I think we're going to see Williams really throwing chance to win. Now, we're looking out there on the race course. Williams has entered really, really high, and he's sailing right bow up into the pre-start. I think he's now jiving back onto what will be starboard. I think they're bringing the bow back up, and I think this is something that he's rehearsed, thought about, perhaps even just run through, just to try and unsettle Jerwood. Bringing the bow down now. Jenica coming out, looking to try and block Jerwood from the jibe. No, Jerwood now complete onto starboard. Williams brings the bow up, and you can see his Jenica furling away. 1:18 to go. Williams coming down and round the outside. Jerwood now unfurling his Jenica, try and build speed, try and defend against the hook. Williams bringing his bow up. Both boats almost, well, dead downwind. Perhaps 160 true on port starboard as they track back towards the start. Wow, big luff from Jerwood, and Williams is in a bit of a broach right on the edge. Williams just hanging on. Jerwood now trying to dig the knife in. I think Jerwood actually just letting Williams off the hook a little bit there. A bit of a luff, but wow, Williams in trouble to windward.
I think the rigs may have touched there, and we could see a penalty on this play.
But we can see that blue flag coming up. I think the umpire's agreeing. Williams has the penalty, Tucker. Great spot there. The rigs touching, and Jerwood there coming in. Williams just get caught out. Umpire Bill Edgerson just deciding, spotting that contact. Now 20 seconds to go. They're right down by the pin. What options does either boat have? Williams will have to do a penalty. He will have to be clear behind at the start. So very little reason for him to try and push to accelerate. He's bringing the bow down now. Can he generate a bit of a luff? Can he hold Williams behind the line in the final few seconds? Williams with a stab. Jerwood completing onto port. But how will he react here? He's got to duck behind Jerwood at some point to complete that penalty turn. Can see him Now just really waiting for Jerwood in the centre of the line, and we're going to see a very interesting exchange. Williams has to get behind Jerwood to clear his penalty. Jerwood has just been caught out of the start, luffed back to the right. But he's just quietly building. You can see that penalty flag still up on Williams. Jerwood is going to try and maximise this as best he can, bringing the bow down now. We will see him make sure that he's as fast as he possibly can before he passes Williams. Williams has to complete, I think, this penalty as soon as possible. I think the rules are talking about. No, he's trying to build his speed. Now Williams will start to go now. Jenica coming out. The overlap, the penalty still outstanding. Now the penalty down. All even Stevens and Williams behind, fighting for his life in this Super 16 round. Jerwood there inflicting an amazing laugh and now leading this match to bring it home and knock out the 6-time match racing world champion.
Now, the only good news for Williams is he's closer at this point in the match than he's been in the previous two, and he's going to be looking to get the jump on the jibe to Jerwood. But, man, what an exciting start. That puff of breeze, you couldn't see it on the water, but it definitely hit the rigs. Caught Williams off guard. Here's the jibe for Jerwood. And
Jerwood
Williams continues.
He's trying to cross Williams, and wow, it's actually a lot closer than it might be. Williams sliding across his stern on starboard, trying to bring the bow up. He's now jibing into a good position to attack. I think Williams is not going to let this one go there. Very, very close actually, and a great jibe from Williams, picking up some extra pressure. He's sailing in a lower groove, and I think he has great opportunity to come back here, pointing down at that bottom gate. Will Jerwood lay down? If he doesn't, Williams, I think, is going to be majorly advantaged here.
You know, one thing I just noticed, Simon, about Jerwood sailing, yes, his bow was up a lot higher, but he did what we used to do in college sailing and lake sailing. He actually sailed across the course to connect with a brand new puff and then put his bow down. And I think it worked. Connect the dots sailing, stay in the best breeze. Jerwood still out in front, and it'll be a split at the bottom gates with Ian Williams heading to the left.
Well, Jerwood really getting out jail free, getting down to that mark. He actually got down to the gate comparatively easily. A bit of a heel on Williams. You just feel like maybe they're just not responding to the conditions quite as well as they would have helped.
Tell you what, they need to do something, and they need to do it fast. This will be their final race if they keep this up in a 1-to-3 win series. Jerwood will tack and immediately stay with Williams, who continues to the far left side.
Right next to that exclusion mark there. Jerwood, I think, maybe even just tapping it with the back of his boat. I mean, that is flirting with danger over on that right-hand shore, but you can see him coming back from the right-hand side. Williams is on the left.
And that boat in the middle is not on the racetrack, the red one. Just for point of reference, it's the blue boat of Williams and the orange boat for Jerwood. Williams now on port, centering up on the track, and Jerwood coming from the right-hand side with a cross.
Jerwood was a couple of lengths ahead into the bottom gate, and I think he's extended a little bit. We've seen that right-hand side pay. I mean, Jerwood does have, I think it'd be fair to say that Jerwood is sailing a little bit quicker. And in doing so, I think almost most of the ways he goes, he seems to be, you could call it a tactical gain, but I think he's just fast. I can see Tucker making a note for his press conference later. I think he might be having a bit of a chat to Williams about his boat speed.
Any advice on what to say to Ian Williams today? I mean, how do you put a positive spin on what could be 3 match races, having flown all the way down here from Great Britain, former world rank number 1 6 times?
I think he'll be pretty, you know, Matt Jerwood is very well liked, and I think, you know, Williams has been doing this enough that I think we'll see him dip his cap to Jerwood on this one. You know, he's gone out there, this young kid, you know, Williams, you know, significantly better funded. These young guys are really pushing with every bit of heart and soul that they have to try and get onto this circuit. And you know what? To break onto this circuit, you have to create moments like this. You know, Matt Jerwood has to go out there in the middle of that run order, and he has to grab, you know, you have to grab a world champion by the scruff of the neck and say, oi, I want my spot on this tour.
Move over.
You know what? He's doing a nice job of really trying to justify that at the moment.
Certainly is.
He's a wild card into this regatta. And, you know, if I was deciding who's going to get the wild cards into the next event, it would be, my eyes would be pretty firmly set on Matt Jerwood as one of the candidates right now.
Interesting, too, for someone like Ian Williams, as tough of a competitor as he is. This is not a game. This is his livelihood. This is everything. all on the line, and it could all be snatched away by the young guns here in Jerwood and crew as they round the top marks again while Williams gives chase. In a few moments, you'll see the cross between the two boats. Williams heading upwind, Jerwood heading downwind. No glances exchanged, no words between those two, and the frustration mounting on board Williams's boat.
Now, crucially here, Williams has changed out Mark Bulkley from his 2016 team. Mark, a very experienced catamaran sailor. And I just wonder if they're missing him right now. He really brought some experience in that catamaran. I think a real engine room of the performance.
And why then, the obvious question, why the change?
Well, I mean, I don't know. We all have our own lives to lead, Tucker, and contrary to popular belief, I'm not a. I didn't really know all the ins and outs of that one, but I think it would be fair to say that that we've seen changes across all the teams at some level. You know, a lot of the strategic partnerships, the values moving around. He's also lost Brad Farad, who's moved across to Nikolai Sersted this year, who was with Williams. Again, a very experienced catamaran sailor, real. He's again super nice guy and universally liked. A real get it done, highly experienced. Done a lot in the Extreme Sailing Series and here in the M32s. And I think that partnership perhaps elsewhere on the boat is what he's missing. So it's not. We're not even talking about how he got on with them or what happened or how it all worked. I think he's lost a little bit of engine room, a sort of communication loop that was actually happening outside of himself, and now he's trying to recreate that with new guys that don't necessarily have those same connections. Maybe there's something in that, and it's about reconnecting the crew. All of the terminals in the computer need to be wired together, if you like, and we are out here in the first regatta, and I think there's a couple of wires loose here in the GAC Pindale program. Well,
big changes obviously make a big difference. And Simon, at the risk of sounding controversial, is it me or does Ian Williams tend to change up a lot of crew over the years?
I don't think so, actually. I think we've seen, if you look at the rotations, it's like professional football. It's like sport at any top level. There's always a bit of a shuffle. Different people have different levels of funding, and professional relationships also, like, occasionally have their time life, and people rotate. People want to keep changing things up, moving forward, trying to develop as best they can.
Great overhead drone shot of Ian Williams' boat. One thing I have noticed, Simon, I've been out of the game for a very long time, so correct me if you disagree, but I've been watching Jerwood's main trim and Williams' main trim, and Jerwood seems to be a lot tighter on the leech, a lot more aggressive. Of course, in that shot, it's the opposite, but overall,
I was hoping,
overall, that's something I seem to have noticed. I'm no catamaran sailor, so I'd be curious to know what you think of the difference in the main trim between these two teams.
Well, there could be something in that. I think we'll keep an eye out on this last. We haven't got long to go now. It's could certainly be something in that. It's you asked earlier what your question to Williams should be, and perhaps that's it.
I thought you were interviewing Williams after this. Here we go on board with Jerwood. There's the timing of that, Jennifer.
I mean, we've been talking about Jerwood's tack, just flipping through the boat, absolute poetry, that
crisp.
Rolled through like he was in a little, like a Firefly or an FJ or a little, one of those boats you just sort of roll to windward and just pop right back up. Absolutely first class.
I wonder if we can go to the same shot on Williams, who will be setting up for attack onto port as well for the alternative.
Just coming down now on board with Williams. And we're thinking about the tacks. We're just watching Williams through here. That ball coming down late on that leeward side, the windward hull potting up. I mean, that again, actually a beautiful tack.
Ian Williams looking ahead to Jerwood, who's on ley line for the final turning mark in this race for what will be 3-0. And that is not a view that Ian Williams flew all the way down under to Australia to see. However, all credit to Matt Jerwood. He's fought hard, as you say. He's grabbed the six-time world champion by the scruff of the neck and proven that he is a player in this top level of match racing sailing.
I mean, he's come through, and you know, you can see them congratulating themselves. You know, they have come and they have conquered. And you know what? Sometimes you see people like Ian Williams lose matches, but in this instance, it is actually Matt Jerwood that has gone out there and won. Absolutely first class from Redline Racing. They punched the air. They're coming through. They're stood up. You can see they're actually celebrating a little bit like they've, won a little bit of a championship. But good on them. You know, they went out head to head with a six-time world champion today. And today they've beaten one of their heroes, and they've done it right in front of their home crowd here in Perth. The lawn are on their feet. And, you know, rightly so. Congratulations, Matt Jerwood, progressing through to that quarter-final. And he's going to be sailing against Chris Steele. And you know what? Chris Steele is an in-form sailor. It will be interesting to see that young matchup. But good on them. They're enjoying the win for now. Great stuff from Matt Jerwood.
And here they come for a bit of a flyby in front of the hometown crowds. We're live with them as well. Let them hear you, folks. Matt Jerwood. There we go, 3-0 over Ian Williams, who now crosses the line. Body language quite different on board.
And look at that. It's a sort of, Tucker, this is supposed to be your bit, and you're not really saying anything. But, you know, not in a bad way. It's you can just see it. We're all kind of looking out there, and, you know, our hearts are with Williams and his team. It's not gone to plan. But you know, this is the season opener. This is the time where you come here, you make those changes, you see how it is with all the setup, with the control, with your new team for the year, how you're making decisions. And you know what? There is no one better to process this, to learn, and to move forward.
So Simon, let's go back into the replay, the highlights, and we'll begin at the start. Of course, that's where it all went backwards for Williams.
So here, Matt Jerwood using that Jenica. We talked about him building that acceleration. Williams sort of responding. Bringing the bow down and...
Watch the rigs here.
Here, big luff. And that Jenica's still on, and we're looking at the tops of the rig. Slow down the play. And there, I think, just in the back there, you can see the luff of the Jenica just coming on to that mainsail on board Williams. So really light touch, but you know what, unquestionably there. And what sailing from Jerwood. Just had that control, had the poise to see Williams' vulnerability with that Jenica up, and just to time that luff absolutely perfectly. And there, leaving Williams in that windward side. Williams actually did a nice job of responding from the pre-start from here, but ultimately it was not enough.
And that was it. Jerwood goes up 3-0. Now we're going to go on to the water. We have Matt Jerwood live.
So Matt Jerwood, congratulations, mate. 3-0. We were watching, we talked this morning before you went out, and you know, you're standing there, you're kind of on top of the world right now.
Yeah, it's not a bad day in the office when you've been a six-time world champion. The boys are wrapped.
Great sailing. I mean, it looked like you just had speed on him. What do you think it came down to?
Oh, my lads on board are absolutely fantastic at sailing the boat. It might not look it right now as Patrick driving away from the camera, but they're absolutely gold. We just kept it clean and played to our strengths, and yeah, it worked out.
Well, listen, you had everyone on the lawn here on their feet. You know, Australia was cheering you on, and you know, nothing better than having a result like that, perhaps a career-defining result like that here on home turf.
It's fantastic to be racing at home and have a result like this. It's so good to see all the Redline Racing supporter shirts up there, and the flag, and we're wrapped. Thanks everyone up there, it's great.
Great stuff, Matt. Well, congratulations to your team, and we'll see you when you get ashore.
Here's Simon, Redline out.
Well, I was going to say you just heard it, but maybe you didn't. A little tough on the audio comms there. And now we go back into the pre-start with David Gilmore, Ian Walker, red and green. We are less than 2 minutes, and we're already into the entry, Simon.
Well, 1:22 to go. Walker in the green, out in front, leading the pair down back into the starting area. Long way from ley line, perhaps 8-9 lengths. Walker in a strong position actually at the moment. You can see really having the control. David Gilmore looking to S up, S down. He's trying to keep that separation, but at the same time sort of coax Walker down towards that ley line. We can see there the pin just starting to loom into group view. 50 seconds. I think Walker actually a little bit early. David Gilmour is doing a nice job of building him down. Now Walker really onto that ley line, forced to respond, turning up. Gilmour bringing his bow down onto his stern, threatening the hook. Bringing his bow down now. Can he force him about? He's bringing the bow up there, blocking off that dive to windward. 25 seconds now. He's got to be careful here, because if Evan Walker can hold him head to wind, if he can get the lock, then he can shut down this pre-start. But Walker is a bit slow, and David Gilmour starting to move. Look, there's the pin. Walker and all sorts of brother. Now can David Gilmour stay behind the line? He's just got to keep his cool in that windward position. I think Walker maybe in all sorts of bother. Can Walker even get across the start? David Gilmour bringing the bow down, starting to build, all clear. But David Gilmour, for me, faster at start time, bringing his bow down onto the reach and into the lead in this match point.
Impressive job for David Gilmour in front of the hometown fans here at the Royal Freshwater Bay Yacht Club. And now he'll power over the bow of Walker into mark number 1 in the lead. He's won the first 2 matches. Can he make it 3?
I mean, great job there from David Gilmour, identifying, well, certainly earlier than me, that Evan Walker was really early. Just hanging back, not pushing to do too much, and striking just at the right time in that pre-start. He was hanging back, driving him down past the ley line, and that a critical mistake from Walker. The pressure of being early, just forcing that early mistake. But what we have seen today is there are big snakes and ladders, big changes out there on the race course. Opportunities to win, opportunities to lose big. And at the moment, Gilmour's advantage only very small. And we're watching Walker coming back in this match right now.
Big puff of breeze, and it hits Walker first. That's exactly what he needed. He got the jump on the jibe and beat Gilmour to it. He got the puff first, and now the question is, can he ride over Gilmour's bow, or can Gilmour stay bow forward, air forward, and maintain his advantage into the leeward gates? There's a look at Walker's boat, and Gilmour to leeward and ahead, but only just. Now the question, will Gilmour lay into the bottom marks? Yes, he's got it. Just look at how close Walker is. He'll go around the same mark. The 2 teams almost overlap. Walker, within half a boat length, is on the offensive. He's on the charge. Back up win.
And David Gilmour there just extending enough. We could hear the umpires on the radio. They're calling overlapped, overlapped, overlapped. And just as they got down to the bottom, we heard them say clear. David Gilmour just getting that little bit ahead, getting that little bit out in front, and able to lead the pair around as they tack up on the right-hand side with David Gilmour in control of this match. And Tucker, we're looking out on the race course now. We're starting to see sort of race after race actually be dominated by one player. I'm just trying to process through. We talked to Sam a little bit about it earlier. Is it what's generating this difference? Is it the boat handling? Is it the strategy? Clearly, it at some extent comes down to the start, but that capacity to extend does seem to be repeating itself.
That's a question I was going to ask you, Simon. One thing I do know is that this match is a whole lot closer than we've seen any of Williams' matches, and that probably is chalked up to the fact that Williams, as you say, in the Northern Hemisphere in the wintertime is a bit rusty compared to these Aussie sailors, and that's probably why this match is a bit closer. And do you think Walker's within striking distance? Can he get a piece of Gilmour to stay alive in this regatta?
Oh, I mean, he could easily come back. It's and actually a couple of times Williams wasn't too far behind. I think it's coming down to small differences between the boats. I think and how they're sailing, how they're setting up for the tacks, but it does seem to be quite consistently repeating itself there. We just saw the set of David Gilmour's main as he came out that tack, absolutely crisp. All the battens popping bang on the same time. The leech tension there for me being exactly right on the mainsail as they exited the tack. The crew coming over at exactly the right time, and it was a better tack than Walker just put in, and that seems to be giving, I think, a lot of those manoeuvres, the crispness in the manoeuvres is giving some of these sailors an advantage over their competitors. So Gilmore out in front, Walker following along behind, tracking out to that right-hand side of the racecourse. We are coming up to the first top gate. At the moment, David Gilmore on home territory off his very own yacht club here on a World Match Racing Tour, which he will have really been aware of, watching his father race around on since his birth. Very familiar brand. I'm sure he could probably draw the logo out in his sleep, but he's there out in front in this Super 16 elimination round. Watched his brother eliminated Sam earlier today by Jan Guichard. They still have one team in the competition. David Gilmore coming in on the top gate to turn around and head back down to the bottom. Out in front, sailing really well. And you know what? We could see David Gilmore really moving forward in this competition. Evan Walker really looking for answers here, and at the moment not finding them. Having just to sail a little bit thin to make it up to the mark. And there the bow coming down now, and the Jenica coming out. Sheet tension coming in from that winch. Off they sail down the run. Gilmore already completing his turn on to port, heading down to the bottom gate.
Sounds like somebody's strangling a bird out there, doesn't it? You hear that in the background?
Oh, I tell you what it is. We're just opposite a big tree that's here on the lawn. Quite untransparent tree, it's fair to say. Just in front of our commentary position, looking out onto the bay. You know, otherwise completely uninterrupted panoramic views of the harbour, and I think it's home to quite a large number of parrots of some description.
They get a lot louder in the afternoon, that's for sure. And the weather's spectacular. We saw rain this morning, rough conditions yesterday, and this is the scene that we've come all the way down here for this afternoon. And certainly if you're a fan of David Gilmore, local team, this is the scene you want to see out on the water. As he heads into the leeward gate for the last time. Strong performance. What was a small lead is now a very comfortable one. And now he'll choose which way to head back upwind at the leeward gates. Here comes the Jenniker Furl. Will it be a jibe around the right-hand mark? As he told you, Simon, in the last interview, he likes to protect that right-hand side upwind, and so it is.
So round he goes. Really nice job of managing the risk in this race, just sticking to what he knows. And Evan Walker there trying to soak down again. He's got to hit these ley lines if he's going to come back. At the moment, David Gilmore just dominating this race. He's getting the decisions right, the starts right, the ley lines right, sailing the boat a little bit better. And just sailing away, really. It's great to see. It's great to see that, you know, obviously we're looking at two strong Australian teams, and I'm sure the local crowd would love to see these guys continue to progress on. But I think having this first stage of the World Match Racing Tour down in Australia is really giving an advantage to some of these young Australian teams to sort of break onto the circuit. You know, I think if this first stage of the World Match Racing Tour was in Great Britain, as an example, or in France, then we'd be seeing each year 3 or 4 French sailors or British sailors sort of breaking onto the tour and having that opportunity to progress. Yeah, you know what, you've got to be good enough, but you know, there are great sailors in those nations that would love this opportunity. And I think being all the way down here, we are seeing sort of time and again these young teams sort of really breaking onto this tour. And you know what, I think out of this sort of crucible of, you know, young sailing talent here in Australia, you know, we are going to be looking at, you know, future America's Cup helmsmen. We are going to be looking at, you know, future gold medalists. This is a real opportunity for the sailing fraternity of Australia, having this first stage of this, you know, known conveyor belt of talent that exists, and there's a clear pathway through into professional sailing and future success and professionally sailing careers. And it's great to see these young teams sort of beginning to dominate. And you know, I'm sure there's plenty of people. You know, we just watched Matt Jerwood dispatch Ian Williams 3-0, and now we're looking at David Gilmore in super duper shape coming up this win.
I'll tell you what, it looks a lot closer than it was after that big split. Gilmore all the way to the left, Walker all the way to the right. Has Walker got a piece of Gilmore?
Oh, very close. I knew that's the curse of the commentator. As soon as you start saying someone's sort of undefeatable, he suddenly gets defeated. And there, out of, I think it was David Gilmour's right-hand side, he'd been protecting that all day, but just perhaps a little bit too expansive, allowing Walker to really break back, picking up extra pressure on that right-hand side. And Seoul Ski Boat skis back into this match.
The advantage now for Gilmour is that in the next tack he'll have starboard, and he may need it. Good breeze for Walker. And this, you know, we've seen all afternoon, Simon, the top of the track is where things get tricky. If Walker's going to stay in this regatta, and if we're going to keep covering more matches this afternoon, this is his moment right here. And it could come. Walker on port, he's got to get across. Can he do it?
Well, this is it. Walker has an opportunity. He is bow forward. David Gilmour's got his bow down, I think, already. Perhaps looking for a little bit of a hunt. Walker now coming up for the tack. Now can David Gilmour get across the front? It's going to be neck and neck. Walker trying to hold on to that inside position, but all the time, David Gilmour building speed. I think he's just locked in. Now can he lay the top mark? I think they're under the lay line, but this is Walker's opportunity. If he's going to stay in this match, he has to make it round this mark ahead. He's got the pride of Sydney against really the weight of Western Australia that's running with Gilmour, but it is Walker that has found a way around the top. The green Jenica breaking out, but David Gilmour coming back on the inside. A big luff from him. He's going over the top. He's brought his bow up, I think, catching Walker napping a little bit, and he is round and over. Now he's got to get down to the finish. It's a short dash. Walker has luffing rights. He's trying to hold Gilmour out, but at the moment Gilmour rolling around the front. Can he get down to the bottom? I think he can. He's bringing his bow down. David Gilmour to come through. He's going to take the win for Western Australia. He's bringing his bow down through the jibe. Walker's coming up behind with a lot more speed. They're past the finish line.
Stand by. We could have a penalty. Looking at the umpire, I see a blue flag. Yeah, there it is. David Gilmour has copped a penalty. That's why he's slowed down. And now Walker slips in and takes the race.
Wow, my heart is in my sleeve. I couldn't understand where they were pointing. And there, Evan Walker there, I think it must have been the luff. We will wait for clarification from the umpire. But David Gilmour really throwing everything at Evan Walker to try and get back. He got around, but he infringed on the way. And Evan Walker is survived to fight again in another match. We will be bringing that live. We are on Facebook and on Twitter at World MRT and on Instagram at World Match Racing Tour. Stay tuned. The action is happening right here, right off the bay. And my goodness, we thought that race was over at the bottom mark, and it was a long way from over. Super duper exciting.
Just when the champagnes were getting ready to be uncorked in what looked to be a 3-0 match, David Gilmour rolls over. Now we're going to replay exactly what happened there, Simon, and hopefully you can pinpoint exactly where the penalty was.
So here we go. Evan Walker tacking in on that inside. There, a little bit of contact there was the... Can we go back? Can we rewind? We're just going to rewind back to that rounding and just watch that back in slow-mo. Now, can we see the racks twitch? That's what we're looking for. The windward rack. It's bearing away. Possibly clean. Very close between the two boats there. We're looking at Evan Walker just managing to pass. And he's bringing the bow right down here. Can see he's looking at the finish. He's focused on the finish. Then he looks behind, and David Gilmour's not there, and he's bringing the bow right back up. And there, the response, the big luff. Now, Gilmour looking to respond.
Late to respond,
A little bit of a
isn't he?
touch there, maybe. Did you see the rack shake?
No, but I saw twice where the luff was curtailed, where it was stopped, where Gilmour didn't continue to give room, I think.
And here, maybe Gilmour could be pressing down. But listen, that really fine judgment between those two boats. Really nip and tuck.
Now at this moment, you'd think David Gilmour has got it. He gets into the zone, and all he has to do is jibe for the finish line. But at this point, the penalty has been determined.
Well, they go on now to sail through the finish. We'll let that replay play out. And you know what? I was looking for it. It could have been time and distance on the luff. It could have been a there was the time the boats were very close, and we do have quite a strict rule on the proximity rule, and you know, even the lightest touch, there the penalty, and David Gilmour having to let Evan Walker past, really take the win. And you know what it does is it opens up the most sensational derby between these two teams.
Man. This could be a late afternoon. You know, Simon, to my eye, there was one luff. He didn't respond quick enough. Then there was a pause and a second luff, and he didn't respond quick enough. He held, at least for me, for an extra second. I didn't see contact, but is that enough to get the penalty?
It certainly could be. It's in. He has to. As the lure boat there, as the aggressor, he has to give David Gilmour room and opportunity to keep clear. And you know, it's a really subtle. It's a subtle choice. I suspect David Gilmour may feel a bit hard done by, if you know, unless we missed something and there was something else in the pre-start. The room at the mark, and if there was contact at that point, that could have been it. But ultimately, we're having the same conversations that they are. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. You know, as it stands, Evan Walker has found a way back in. He broke back into that match. He's come back to 1-2. He's got 2 more races to win if he's going to close out this match. But he has just had a glimmer of light shine through a window pane. The door into this match has swung back open, and I'm sure he's going to do everything he can to grab it with both hands. We are now getting ready for a repeat. This is going to be our last match that we're going to follow through. We'll stay with it through to the end to see a winner of this pairing. We are live to you every afternoon from 2 o'clock local time here in Western Australia, all the way through to Saturday, where we will see that finals and a champion crowned on this first stage of the World Match Racing Tour in 2015. You can keep up with us on Facebook /World Match Racing Tour. We're on Twitter @WorldMRT and on Instagram @World Match Racing Tour, using the hashtag WMRT.
So I just received some very good information from Ed Feathers, who's doing the live radio coverage on 91.3. Joe Alley is on board Walker's boat, and she is the strategist, the tactician, if you will. You mentioned earlier today that with the new rules as far as the weights are in these M32s, it opens the door for co-ed teams and more women to get involved in the sport. Well, there's a great example, certainly in that match, of you know, a co-ed team sailing beautifully.
It's plain and simply an advantage. You know, it's you know, these teams are the best teams in the world, and they're just fighting it out to have the strength, the weight, the brain power, the skill, the talent, all in the right place. And you can see them, they're sailing with 5, so they will be carrying 1 super light
There's Joe
person
looking
who's
at her
free
watch in
to
front of the
roam,
boat.
and in that instance free to use that ability to move around the boat unencumbered, to actually sort of be calling tactics, be actually governing the choices that boat makes, what that whole race team is doing. She's sort of like the boss, essentially. You know, she's not the pilot, but she's the kind of decision maker on board. And you know, great job in that race to pick that right hand side in sort of bottom third of the race, and to break back.
All right, so here we go. Just 10 seconds to go to the pre-start entry. Walker has done what he needs to do to stay alive in the regatta and force at least one more match to David Gilmour's 2 wins. And it's going to be Gilmour to leeward in the entry and Walker to windward in the green boat, Gilmour in the red. Here we go, just under 2 minutes, the entry period.
So Walker in the green, entering from above the committee boat. David Gilmour coming in underneath. Walker must take this match if he's going to stay in this competition. You can see the streaky conditions still rolling in here off the Royal Freshwater Bay Yacht Club. David Gilmour bringing the bow down, Walker in the lead position, trying to manage this pair back. Now again, Walker was early in the previous pre-start, and he's got to try and make sure he doesn't do that again. Gilmour bring the bow down, a little bit of a bury the bow, but nothing too much to worry about as he hunts down. Now for me, Evan Walker is still a little bit early. This time David Gilmour going for a much bigger hook, and I think that's actually handing the advantage a little bit back to Walker, because you can see now it allows him to come up much, much thinner and actually really slow the game down. And from that lead position, he's now managed to separate away a little bit and waste a lot of speed, and suddenly his position gets a lot stronger. 30 seconds to go. Gilmour now getting some speed back on, but he's now got a little bit on to press Walker back to the start, who's just managing that separation, trying to stay away from Gilmour, but he won't be pushed back early. I think we'll see an even start from these two in this race. Gilmour now pulling the trigger. Evan Walker has to respond. He's keeping that bow up, but Gilmour really starting to move. Excellent speed build from the man from Perth. But the final few seconds tick away, and it is Evan Walker in that windward position, bringing the bow down, all clear. And this match that Evan Walker must win. David Gilmour needs 1, Evan Walker needs 2. And at the moment, Walker, I think, in the stronger position in the windward berth, rolling over the top of David Gilmour to round the first match. Great execution. It all came down to the setup at the bottom of that lead-in, where David Gilmour just got a little bit low, went for too big of a hook, and ultimately handed the positioning back to Walker.
Well, Walker has certainly turned the tide, flipped the tables on Gilmour, and also it was an interesting late Jenneker deploy, I thought, on that first leg. Gilmour electing to keep his Jenneker furled up a little bit longer, and Walker just rolled over the top. Now it's Walker's race to lose. Was almost out of this regatta up until the last few boat lengths to the finish of that last match, and now he leads for the first time in leg number 2 downwind to Gilmour, who will jibe first. Walker responds ahead and to leeward.
Down and through the jibe and popping the hull straight back out. Pointing at the bottom gate.
Massive puff. See the
a little bit of dig in the
nosediving.
bow, and David Gilmour starting to move forward, and Evan Walker coming in for a bit of a luff. Can see there shouts from the leeward boat trying to force him up. David Gilmour trying to respond, but Evan Walker luffing all the time. The big aggressor coming in, and the umpires have weighed in. They didn't think David Gilmour did enough. It's a yellow penalty. Now he should be able to do that quite quickly. He's just got to duck back behind the line of Walker,
which he's done there after that jibe. And interesting, he copped the same penalty just like he did in the last race, not keeping clear as a windward boat. Walker, beautiful job protecting his lead and doling out yet another yellow flag penalty. His penalty hasn't been shed. Gilmour heading to the left-hand side. Walker defending that valuable right-hand side, looking back upwind. But Gilmour still has to shed that yellow flag penalty.
Wow. I think we'll try and get another little close-up of the committee, but I think there's 2 penalties.
That's the umpire boat, middle of the screen with the pink flag, and you can just make out a yellow flag penalty. It has not been removed. Whoop, I speak too soon. Now it's been removed. Penalty shed. So the game is now even again, but it is Walker's race to lose as he protects the right side. Now just tacking to cross over Gilmour. For the first time, Gilmour's in big trouble.
Boy, David Gilmour mounting pretty strong comeback already.
Yeah.
I think they decided he'd obviously washed that penalty, but as the boats come back together, I think Evan Walker could feel a little hard done by there. He's not a long way ahead. There's perhaps only a length or 2 in it, and David Gilmour needs to be 2 lengths behind on course axis.
And Gilmour also heading to that valuable right-hand side and with starboard advantage when the 2 teams meet again. Here he comes tacking to stay in check with Walker, who continues to the far left.
Great tack again from Gilmour. Up in that top right-hand corner, Evan Walker continuing right across underneath the yacht club here at the Royal Freshwater Bay. He needs to win this match to stay in the competition. If you're just back joining us, we are live here on Facebook, bringing you the action from our final Super 16 match here from today. Watching 16 teams be whittled down to 8. We'll see more action tomorrow in the afternoon in our session at 2 till 5. A great tack from Walker, who seems to really burst back into life up on this left-hand side.
Now, has Gilmour got a piece of him on starboard or not?
I think Evan Walker across, but not by much. This is a really close match. Walker, remember, sailing for his position in the competition. And what a story to finish the day. If Walker was able to hold on to this, we'd be watching this go to a sudden death elimination round. That's certainly what Walker's pushing for. David Gilmour, I'm sure, much rather do this in one. And, you know, we'd all but popped the champagne corks for the Gilmour family earlier today. And, wow, Evan Walker turning it back on at the tail end of the last race. And that's really energized his team, energized him as a skipper. And he is fighting to stay in this competition. Walker in the left, in the green. David Gilmour in the red on the right.
David Gilmour's mother, Chris, has been listening all week long to the commentary very intently, particularly for her son's races, and I guarantee she'll be biting her fingernails at this point. It's just, you can feel the tide shifting a little bit for Walker and crew as this excitement builds.
Well,
can Gilmour get back in the game or not?
Well, every tack, you feel like you've got your heart in your mouth, and David Gilmour coming back with some great pressure out of that left-hand side. Evan Walker now picking up that same burst, but absolutely nothing between these teams. Now, can Walker lay? He needs to lay that left-hand mark. David Gilmour tacking on his line. He must feel he's on a comfortable lay.
Ooh,
Yes,
the
he
game's
is.
going to be
He's
on
around.
downwind. The delta less than 3 boat lengths. Gilmour trying to get up to speed and deploy quick enough to stay in touch with Walker, who is fighting for the front, trying to keep hope alive in this regatta.
Now, you may think, just there, a small mistake from Gilmour. I think he had the option there to have come in on ley line for that right-hand mark, you know. By coming in a couple of lengths under, he had to do another tack, and what went from bow even has gone to, if you like, a couple of lengths back. I mean, I say that, David Gilmour's now charging in with a bit of extra speed. Walker with attack,
close.
David Gilmour jibing to try and get over the top of him. Can he get a little burst of speed? They're right by the finish boat. Evan Walker picking up a puff, powering away. Look at that. When you need to dial a gust, you want to be Evan Walker right now.
Wow.
0800 gust, and he is out of there in the lead position, leading this pair down.
Where did that come from? Within 1 length between the two boats, it's now growing to 6 or 7. And they were within the same piece of water. Walker got the puff.
But
Gilmour
it was like
did
a
not.
little magic wand. It was pointing at Gilmour to start with. He came bursting back into the match, and then right at the throw, Walker just picking up the front edge of it and just bursting away again. But listen, far from over. Still nothing really to pick between these teams. Going back down the run in this finely poised. You know, I'm sort of on the edge of my seat. I'm literally sitting on the edge of my seat. It's a real nail biter, this one. And Gilmour starting to come back again. Evan Walker leading the jibe down on the front of Gilmour into the bottom gate.
As you
Now
say,
we may
Shazzy.
well see a split. Sorry, Tucker. So coming into this bottom, Gilmour probably going to jibe around that left-hand mark. Go to the trusty right. No, Evan Walker leading it. So Gilmour will split to the left-hand side of the race course. It's the right hand looking downwind. Gilmour
Perhaps
in the
not.
red, Walker in the green. And we are back on really even Stevens. So hard to pick between these teams. I am loving this action. This is the Western Australian, Eastern Australian derby.
Now, to my eye, Walker seems to be sailing into strong pressure to that right-hand side, and David Gilmour is rolling it all, betting it on this left-hand side. That's probably his only option. The farther he continues, the more leverage he can generate, the better his options will be to stay in the match. Walker, meanwhile, protecting the right-hand side, which has worked for Gilmour so often this afternoon, and starboard advantage. And so far, a lead that will keep him in the regatta. Here comes Gilmour tacking onto port to connect with his opponent. Now, has he made a gain?
I think a little lighter out of that tack. Again, an excellent tack. Both these skippers are sailing the boat so well. A real credit to how well they've all prepared. Evan Walker, I think, still for me with perhaps a small advantage. He's certainly across. Dave Tallis.
I don't know. I think this is a lot closer than it looks. Gilmour really clawing his way back into this match, Simon. Within about a length and a half, ducking. Now he'll shift over to the right-hand side, halfway up the beat. And that's the big question, Simon. Where is the last puff going to come from? Who's going to pick it right?
Wow, what a match. Wow, Evan Walker just picking up a bit of puff. but David Gilmour has hung in so well in this match, leading off to that right-hand side now.
And this will be the final turn to the finish. So if Gilmour can get it done in 1 on the lay line, the starboard lay line, and if Walker has to do 2 to get around, advantage Gilmour.
Oh, I mean, you know, if David Gilmour can find a way around here, he's won this match. He's through to that quarter-final. Evan Walker fighting for his life. It's
Walker.
Perth and Western Australia versus New South Wales and Sydney.
Listen, I'm impressed with what Gilmour's doing out to that far right-hand side. He just needs to get up to speed, make the starboard lay line stick, and stay in touch with Walker. Walker, meanwhile, needs to get across Gilmour on port. Under the rules, of course, Gilmour has right of way. Now the breeze starting to die on this left-hand side, and then building. There's a lull between the two teams, Simon. Which one is going to carry the momentum across?
Wow, it's a big cross. And David Gilmour starting to wind up, as is Walker. And for me, David Gilmour getting the slightly better of the pressure just as they come together. It's going to come down to such small differences. I don't think either of them lay, but Evan Walker attacking underneath. Now can David Gilmour roll? It's looking strong at the moment. David Gilmour coming in with speed and power, but they're both under the lay line. If they can lay, if both teams can lay, it's going to come down to such small difference. Evan Walker now match speeds on the inside. David Gilmour's above. It's a bit of an overlap. Here's the luff from Walker, trying to hold Gilmour back. David Gilmour looking for the roll. He's bringing the bow down. Is he going to get across? David Gilmour gets just around the front of Evan Walker. And we have a lead change. And the Perth local hero leaves Evan Walker floundering at the top. It didn't work out. He tacked into a lead. He just tried to hold on, but it was not enough. And it is David Gilmour that is going to come down, and he's going to come through the line, and he is going to close this out. The crowds are on their feet. My goodness, Tucker, what a race. We didn't see that coming at the end.
Unreal. I'm sure the fans on shore didn't see it either. What looked like it was going to be simply a 3-0 walkover, and then Walker back in the game. Walker leading this entire race right to the finish. We saw it at the top of the track. There was just a tiny crack in the door, and Gilmour took advantage of it, rolled over to the top, and he's done it, folks. He moves on to the quarterfinals right in front of the hometown fans here at Royal Freshwater Bay Yacht Club in Perth, Australia. What a fantastically exciting way to end the day.
I mean, fantastic. You know, for me, David Gilmour won that by hanging in there. You know, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 crosses in that race, and every time he was a boat length behind, a couple of boat lengths behind, back to 1 boat length, you know. And it's so difficult as that trailing boat to keep that delta that tight. You know, cross after cross after cross. He saw his opportunity and he pounced right at the top. Absolutely first class, and really an exhibition of sailing for both those teams.
And there are the fans on shore. Many of them David Gilmour fans, and for good reason. They'll be happy this afternoon. Let's go see how it all went down, Simon. We go back into this start with the replay right from the beginning. Okay, right from the downwind run.
So in and down, Evan Walker there. Now we had a bit of a luff between the two. David Gilmour looking to try and roll in, and Evan Walker big on the luff and big on the defence. Now the umpire's deciding Gilmour not doing enough there. He's just hanging in there, and Evan Walker's still luffing, and the yellow flag just creeping up. I think deciding he needed to have furled that Jenniker away. But then here into the downwind, David Gilmour trying to pounce, nearly getting across the front, and then the absolute blistering acceleration from Evan Walker that, to be honest, you thought may go on to define the match. Made him slip away down the racetrack, escaping off into the lead. But then right in the final throws, Evan Walker with the tack. It was an absolute tightrope of a move, tacking underneath. David Gilmour looking to try and roll. Evan Walker using every inch of his skill to try and respond, to hang in that leeward position. Absolutely first class from both teams. But in the end, right at the throw, right in the final seconds as they approached that top mark, Evan Walker got an incy bit slow. And you watch, it is a massive reaction from David Gilmour. There's the luff, and then David Gilmour bringing the bow down hard around that top mark, and he closes it out, points at the finish, and wins it here on home territory.
That was it. He hung in right to the end. Very impressive performance, and he takes the win 3-1 over Jerwood. Now we're going to go down on the water, of course, and hear from the man himself, David Gilmour.
So, David, what an amazing result on home turf. You're through into the next round, but that last match looked like an absolute nail-biter.
It was a really good race. Evan and his team definitely stepped it up in those last two races. And I was making a few errors. We got 3 penalties, or maybe 4 in the last 2 races, which definitely didn't help us. But I mean, it was all about just being patient, and we sort of felt confident with the way we were sailing the boat, and we sort of thought we could get around them if we had some opportunities. So we were patient enough and got there at the end.
Well, you got there in the end. You know, you were close on so many crosses. You know, how focused were you on keeping that race tight?
I think we were trying. I think the previous race we got a little bit too tight and sort of lost. And I think in these boats, in this sort of conditions, you've got to just sail pretty loosely actually, and just keep going, keep doing what you would normally do, and just sort of rely on. I guess a game of chance with the wind, and it sort of all evens out in the end, which it did, and we're happy.
Yeah, David, Tucker Thompson here. First of all, well done. Second of all, it all came down to what looked like that final tack onto starboard at the top of the beat. How early did you see that opportunity setting up, your 1 tack to his 2? Did you think that was going to be your moment to make the pass?
Yeah, we were working on that from the bottom mark. I mean, you set your sort of your strategy up with which gate you're around and how many tacks you're going to do, and we thought out there was an opportunity to pass by splitting gates with him, and we just dipped him in the previous cross, and it sort of we knew that we only had 1 more tack and they had 2 more, and it was going to be close. And yeah, so we're pretty confident after that last duck roll that we're going to get out to that right.
Great stuff, David, and congratulations on your win. I tell you what, there were a lot of happy people here on the lawn of the Royal Freshwater Bay Yacht Club. So congratulations, through to the next round, and let's hope we can see more of that winning performance as you move through. Well done.
A very happy David Gilmour and crew. And now let's take a look at the results overall from what we've seen this afternoon as the teams are looking to go on to the quarterfinals. Well, Taylor Canfield will. He's 3-0 over Peter Jan Postma. David Gilmour, we just saw 3-1 over Evan Walker. And then moving down to the bottom of the track, Sam Gilmour lost all 3 matches. David's brother, unfortunately, the Frenchman Jan Guichard. And Ian Williams lost all of his matches to Matt Jerwood. And then finally, very close between Chris Steele and Warrer, 3-2 in that match. And now we know who will move on into the quarterfinals. Only 1 more to be determined, Simon. Right there in the middle, it is all on. The top 16 whittled down to 8 tomorrow, and then finally 4 for the semifinals. Only 2 will be standing in the final of this regatta on Saturday afternoon. Of course, we're going to be live all over the world.
We've got some crackers. That Cersted Thomas match going to be really, really close. So lots to look forward to tomorrow. We are going to be live from 2 o'clock Western Australian time on Facebook, on YouTube, and on www.wmrt.com. That wraps up our live performance. Thanks, Tucker. What an amazing day.
It was fantastic. Well, the fans here locally got what they paid for if they were fans of David Gilmour. Lots more sailing to go here. Royal Freshwater Bay Yacht Club in Perth, Australia. For Simon Shaw, I'm Tucker Thompson. We'll see you tomorrow live, 2 p.m. local time.